Hello, dear listeners, and welcome. Tonight, we will journey through 100 gentle lessons drawn from the rich tapestry of Norse mythology. In this soothing exploration, we'll start with small insights and gradually wander into the deepest wisdom of the Viking Age. Along the way, we'll hear of mighty gods and humble heroes, ferocious beasts and magical realms, and discover what their stories can teach us about life. From the simplest tale to the grand saga of the world's end and rebirth, each lesson will carry us one step further, rising from the least to the most profound. Now, get cozy, close your eyes if you wish, and let's begin our journey into the Old Norse world of wonder and wisdom. 1. Even gods have flaws. Norse mythology sets itself apart by portraying gods who are not all-powerful or morally perfect, but deeply human in their imperfections. Unlike the single, infallible gods of some religions, the Norse gods often mirrored the people who worshiped them, brave and inspiring, yes, but also capricious, fallible, even mischievous. Odin, the All-Father, can be wise and noble in one tale and cunning or cruel in another. Thor, the thunder god, is strong and brave but sometimes quick-tempered or even a bit gullible. The trickster Loki is clever and witty but also unreliable and prone to causing trouble. These stories remind us that no one is perfect, not even a god. And in a way, that's comforting. The Norse people could relate to their deities, seeing that even divine beings make mistakes, learn, and grow. The lesson for us is one of self-acceptance. Being imperfect is part of being alive. We can strive for wisdom and courage like Odin and Thor, but we should also forgive ourselves for our flaws. Even the highest gods had to work with their limitations, learn from errors, and find strength in vulnerability. In these ancient tales, to be flawed is to be authentically real, and there is much kindness and wisdom in that understanding. 2. Sacred hospitality. In the Norse world, offering warmth and kindness to a stranger was not just courtesy, it was a sacred duty. An old Norse poem teaches that a person in need should be given fire, food, and clothing without hesitation. We hear of wanderers and travelers seeking shelter in harsh winters, and how a good host would welcome them to the hearth. The gods themselves often tested mortals' hospitality by arriving in disguise. Odin, it is said, would roam Midgard, the human world, as an old man in a cloak, knocking on doors to see who would offer him a meal or a dry place by the fire. Those who welcomed the stranger were rewarded, and those who turned him away might later discover they had spurned a god. One story tells of a farmer who, despite having little, slaughtered his only goat to feed a hungry traveler, who later revealed himself as Odin and blessed the farmer's household. Such tales impressed upon the Norse that hospitality is holy. By caring for guests, one might be caring for the divine in disguise. In our lives, too, this lesson echoes. Treat others with kindness, especially those in need. A warm meal or a bed offered to someone weary can be a nearly sacred act. In showing generosity, we create bonds of fellowship. The Vikings believed that hospitality would be repaid in kind, if not by the guest, then by the gods who witnessed the good deed. This gentle principle invites us to build a world where everyone can find a warm fire and friendly shelter on a cold night. 3. Gift-giving and friendship. The Norse valued friendship deeply, and they saw generosity as the glue of fellowship. To his friend a man should bear him as friend, and gift for gift bestow, advises the Havamal, a collection of Odin's wisdom verses. In their culture, friends exchanged weapons, food, and ale as signs of mutual respect. A modest gift, even half a loaf and a tilted bowl of mead, could earn you a loyal friend. This spirit of reciprocity runs through their myths. The gods themselves share treasures and favors among each other. We see Odin giving one of his magical rings to another god, or Freyr lending his sword, a decision with consequences we'll hear about later, out of love. There's a saying that a burden shared is a burden halved, and indeed, in Norse tales, comrades share the weight of hardships and the fruits of victories. Even when the Vikings feasted in Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, they all drank together from a magical mead barrel that never ran dry, a mythical depiction of endless sharing. The Norse lesson here is one of mutual support and open-handedness. To have a friend, be a friend. Give gladly and receive gratefully. They believed that what you gave out would come back to you, creating a circle of generosity. Envy and stinginess, on the other hand, were frowned upon. The miser or oathbreaker was often isolated and unhappy in sagas. As we drift in this warm understanding, we can carry it into our own lives. Cherish your friends and family, exchange kindness and gifts freely, and know that true wealth lies not in what is hoarded, but in what is shared. 4. Humor and humility. For all their fierceness, the Norse gods had a healthy sense of humor, often at their own expense. Their stories are full of playful, sometimes absurd episodes that bring smiles and lessons in equal measure. One famous tale recounts how Thor had his mighty hammer stolen by a giant who demanded the goddess Freyja's hand in marriage as ransom. Freyja refused, so Loki the trickster suggested an outrageous plan. Thor would disguise himself as the bride. The thunder god, barrel-chested and bearded, donned a bridal gown and veil. With Loki as his bridesmaid, Thorja went to the giants' hall. The giants were fooled, though puzzled by the bride's prodigious appetite at the feast. When the hammer Mjolnir was brought out to bless the marriage, Thor snatched it back and revealed himself, thunderously ending the wedding with laughter and blows. This comical myth shows that even a proud warrior like Thor could play the clown when needed, and it saved the day. In another story, Thor competes in challenges in the hall of a giant king, only to lose repeatedly and be greatly humiliated, until it's revealed he was attempting the impossible, wrestling old age itself, among other tricks. The giants laugh, and Thor, humbled, must laugh too and learn his limits. Such episodes taught the Norse two things: don't take yourself too seriously, and stay humble. If the gods can dress and drag or admit defeat with grace, surely we mortals can endure a little embarrassment now and then. Laughter, especially at oneself, was a valued release, kept pride in check. Many a Viking sitting around the hearthfire must have chuckled at Thor's misadventures and taken to heart the notion that a bit of humor can lighten even the heaviest load. In life's long journey, those who can smile at themselves and roll with a joke often fare better than those who bristle with pride. The Norse myths whisper to us that humility paired with laughter is its own kind of strength. 5. Turning mistakes into miracles. A delightful lesson in Norse lore is that even a misdeed or mishap can, with effort and cleverness, be turned into something good. The tale of Sif's golden hair illustrates this well. Sif was the wife of Thor, famed for her long, beautiful golden hair. One night, the mischievous Loki sneaked in and cut off all of Sif's hair for a prank. Imagine Thor's fury when he discovered his wife shorn. The thunder god's rage was so great that he swore to break every bone in Loki's body for this insult to Sif's honor. Loki, ever the smooth talker, begged for a chance to make amends. He traveled to the realm of the dwarves, master smiths, and commissioned them to craft not only a new head of hair for Sif but other treasures as well. The dwarves fashioned magical, living golden hair that would attach to Sif's head and grow like real hair, as radiant as the sun. They also forged wondrous items: the hammer Mjolnir for Thor, which would become his greatest weapon, and other gifts for the gods, such as Odin's spear Gungnir and Freyr's ship Skidbladnir. Loki presented these to the gods, turning wrath into gratitude. Thor got his unbreakable hammer, all thanks to Loki's initial mischief. Thus, from Loki's mistake came miracles that benefited all. The lesson here is one of redemption and creativity. We all err, but what matters is what we do after. The Norse believed a wrong could often be righted if you owned up to it and put in the effort or cleverness to set things straight. Loki's quick thinking and the dwarves' skill transformed a bad situation into a boon. In our lives, when we mess up, we can remember this story. With sincerity, creativity, and hard work, we too might turn our blunders into something positive. Sometimes our greatest gifts and growth sprout from our mistakes, just as Sif's new golden hair grew brighter than before. 6. Youth and vitality must be cherished. The Norse gods were powerful, but they had a secret dependency: magical apples of youth. Idun, a gentle goddess, kept a box of golden apples that the gods had to eat to remain young and strong. Whenever the gods began to feel the touch of age, their hair graying or their vigor fading, they would seek out Idun's apples and, with a bite, restore their youth and health. This myth taught the Norse that even divine strength needs renewal. In one story, a giant tricks Loki into luring Idun out of Asgard and kidnaps her. Deprived of Idun's apples, the gods rapidly age and weaken. Their skin wrinkles, hair turns white, and they feel their might slipping away. It's a dire crisis until Loki, feeling the weight of his misdeed, rescues Idun and her apples. The moment she returns and offers the golden fruit, the gods revive to their hale, hearty selves. The lesson in Idun's tale is twofold. First, maintaining one's vitality requires care. Even gods must mind their well-being. The Vikings, who led hard lives, understood that strength and youth were transient. One had to nurture them. Second, it symbolizes that life's vigor is precious and not to be taken for granted. In a broader sense, Idun's apples remind us to care for our health, to recharge our batteries with proper nourishment, be it food, rest, or things that feed the soul. It also speaks to the seasons of life. Spring's apples restore the world after winter's decay. The Norse may not have had modern science, but in this myth they acknowledge that everyone needs rejuvenation. Sometimes we need our own version of Idun's apples, perhaps time with loved ones, nature's beauty, sleep, or laughter to regain our energy and youthfulness of spirit. Treat those sources of renewal as sacred. The gods guarded Idun jealously, and we too should protect and cherish what keeps us youthful, healthy, and hopeful in heart. 7. The peril of broken promises. Norse myths often emphasize that oaths and promises carry great weight, and breaking them can lead to trouble. A striking example is the tale of the giant builder of Asgard. After a war, the gods wanted to fortify their home, Asgard, with a mighty wall. A mysterious builder, who was actually a giant in disguise, offered to build it, but demanded a steep price, the goddess Freya as his wife, plus the sun and moon. The gods were furious at the audacity of this demand, but crafty Loki suggested a counterproposal. They would agree to the price only if the builder could finish the entire wall in just one winter, with no help except from his horse. Secretly, the gods never intended to pay. They thought this task impossible. The builder, however, accepted and swore the gods to an oath to honor the deal if he met the terms. To the gods' alarm, the giant builder worked astonishingly fast, his equally supernatural horse dragging colossal stones day and night. As winter's end neared, it became clear the wall would be completed and the oath would come due. The gods fell into panic. They could lose Freya, the beloved sun and moon. They turned angrily to Loki, blaming his idea, and demanded he fix this or face deadly punishment. This leads to another lesson, which we'll cover next. But for now, note how seriously oaths were taken. Even gods felt bound by their sworn word. The Norse held personal honor and keeping one's word as sacred. In their society, an oath-breaker was the worst sort of person. This myth underscores that a rash promise, or a deceptive one, can put you in dire straits. It's a caution to be careful what you agree to, and once you give your word, to uphold it if at all possible. Ultimately, the gods avoid paying this price through Loki's intervention. But the giant's fate is grim, and the whole affair nearly plunged Asgard into darkness. The tale urges us to honor our commitments and think hard before we make promises. Words have power, for Vikings and for us, and when given as an oath, they shouldn't be tossed aside lightly, lest we invite chaos or ruin our honor. 8. Clever solutions in a pinch. When faced with an impossible situation, the Norse myths encourage us to use ingenuity and bold creativity. Let's return to the crisis of the giant builder. As the builder came within a breath of finishing the wall on time, the desperate gods turned to Loki. Fix this or else. Loki is a complex figure, often the cause of problems, but also uniquely capable of solving them in unorthodox ways. To stop the builder, Loki transformed himself into a mare, a female horse, and trotted out to distract the giant's powerful stallion. One moonlit night, as the giant and his horse hauled a final load of stones, a pretty mare appeared in the woods, whinnying flirtatiously. The stallion, Svadilfari, perked up his ears and broke free of his harness to chase this enchanting female horse, unaware it was Loki in disguise. The builder shouted in dismay and ran after his runaway horse. All night, Loki the mare led Svadilfari on a wild chase through the forest, far away from the construction site. The next morning, the wall was still unfinished and the deadline had passed. The enraged giant, realizing he'd been tricked, flew into a fury, which revealed his true giant form, and that sealed his fate. Thor dealt with him promptly. Meanwhile, Loki, still in horse form, had an unintended consequence. He became pregnant by the stallion. Later, he gave birth to an extraordinary 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, whom he gifted to Odin, but that's another story. The key lesson here is the value of quick thinking and adaptability. Loki couldn't overpower the giant or the horse by force, but by thinking sideways, leveraging the giant stallion's one weakness, mating instinct, he achieved what brute strength could not. In life, we sometimes face unsolvable problems if we attack them head-on. Norse lore whispers that a bit of trickery or unconventional thinking can unlock a solution. When one path is blocked, find another, even if it means changing yourself, as Loki did literally. This clever stunt saved the gods from disaster. We too can remember, ingenuity often trumps sheer force, and wit can win where muscle or anger fail. It's a playful yet profound reminder to keep our minds flexible and resourceful. 9. Teamwork and trust in allies. The Norse myths are full of instances where even the mightiest gods needed a helping hand. No one, not even Thor or Odin, could do everything alone. Collaboration and trust often made the difference between victory and defeat. Take the story of Thor's journey to confront a giant named Geirrid. Loki's mischief had landed them in trouble again. Loki had been captured by Geirrid and only won release by promising to bring Thor, unarmed, into the giant's lair. On the way, Thor stopped at the home of a friendly giantess named Grid. When she learned Thor was heading into danger without his hammer or equipment, Grid decided to help. She loaned Thor her own iron gloves and a magical staff and warned him of Geirrid's traps. Armed with these gifts and knowledge, Thor survived an ambush in the giant's hall, even crushing Geirrid's daughters who tried to kill him. Ultimately, Thor defeated Geirrid using the giantess's staff to strike the killing blow. Without his allies' assistance, Thor might have met a nasty end. This tale underlines that even heroes need allies. Thor's strength was tremendous, but in this case wisdom and tools provided by someone else saved him. Another example. When it came time to bind the great wolf Fenrir, it took all the gods working together, one distracting the wolf, one forging the magical binding rope, one, Tyr, sacrificing for the plan to work. Alone, none could have accomplished the task. The Viking culture was similarly team-oriented. Crews of longships, families, and warbands all survived by unity. The lesson is clear. Don't be too proud to accept help. We each have our strengths, but also our blind spots and weaknesses. There is no shame in leaning on a friend's shoulder or using tools crafted by others. In fact, the Norse sagas celebrate it. Companionship and loyalty are golden virtues. Just as the gods held councils to discuss problems and often rode into adventure in groups, we thrive when we form our own fellowship in life. Trust, once earned, was sacred. Thor trusted Grid's counsel, and it saved him. So when challenges loom, remember you likely have allies, friends, family, mentors, willing to lend you their strength or wisdom. Together, as the Norse believed, we are always stronger. 10. Learning from other cultures. The Norse myths contain a subtle lesson about openness and learning, even from one's former enemies. The prime example is the peace made between two groups of deities, the Aesir and the Vanir. The Aesir were the sky gods of war and power, Odin, Thor, Tyr, and others, while the Vanir were fertility gods of earth, sea, and prosperity, like Njord, Freyr, Freya. According to myth, the two tribes fought a war that ended in stalemate. Instead of destroying each other, they chose reconciliation. They exchanged hostages. The Vanir gods Njord and his children Freyr and Freya went to live among the Aesir, and the Aesir sent Honir and Mimir to the Vanir. To seal their truce, all the gods spat into a cauldron. From this mingled spit, they created a being named Kvasir, a wise being embodying their collective peace. Freya, now living in Asgard, brought with her the art of cedar, a form of magic and prophecy. It was said that Freya taught the Allfather Odin this Vanir magic, something the warlike Aesir had never practiced. Odin was humble enough to learn from her, even though in Norse society sorcery was sometimes seen as unmanly, a striking example of open-mindedness. By learning cedar, Odin gained powerful new knowledge of fate and spells. This exchange of wisdom made both tribes stronger and richer. The lesson here is unity and curiosity. When you encounter those who are different, there is much to be gained by an open exchange. The Aesir and Vanir could have clung to pride and kept fighting, but by making peace and sharing their best with each other, they ushered in a golden era. Likewise, the myths encourage us to learn from those with different skills, perspectives, or backgrounds. Sometimes the very thing we lack, or a new skill, a new idea, may come from someone we initially saw as other. The Norse realized that wisdom knows no boundaries. Odin's never-ending quest for knowledge led him to sit at the feet of a Vanir goddess to learn secrets of the universe. In our lives, embracing diversity of thought and respecting others' expertise can lead to unexpected blessings. There's a beautiful humility in Odin learning from Freya. It tells us never to stop learning, wherever knowledge can be found, even if it means learning something outside your comfort zone or from someone very different from you. 11. The relentless pursuit of wisdom. Odin, the chief of the gods, is often called the All-Father and is portrayed as a wise, one-eyed wanderer. But Odin did not come by his wisdom cheaply. One of the most famous Norse lessons comes from Odin's sacrifice of an eye. In his quest to understand the deepest mysteries of the cosmos, Odin sought out Mimir's well, the well of wisdom, hidden under one of the roots of the world tree. Mimir, the guardian of the well, a being renowned for his knowledge, agreed to let Odin drink from the water of wisdom, but only at a price. Odin had to pluck out one of his own eyes and drop it into the well as payment. Odin, determined to gain wisdom no matter the cost, gouged out his eye. In return, he was allowed a single draught from the well's sacred waters, which filled him with understanding. From that day on, Odin has one eye, usually depicted as the wise, piercing eye that sees hidden truths, and the other socket empty, covered by a wide-brimmed hat or an eye patch. This sacrifice is a powerful symbol. To gain insight, Odin gave up outer sight. He traded a part of his physical self for inner enlightenment. What does this teach us? The Norse believed that wisdom is worth great sacrifice. True understanding may require giving up something dearly beloved, comfort, convenience, or a cherished viewpoint. Odin's story encourages us to value knowledge and self-improvement even at cost. It also suggests the idea that wisdom often comes from hardship or loss. Just as Odin's physical vision was reduced, his spiritual vision expanded. In our lives, we sometimes learn and grow the most through difficult experiences that change us. Odin's missing eye is a reminder that every gain has a price, but some gains, like wisdom, are worth any price. And once he had paid that price, Odin didn't hoard wisdom for himself. He used it to lead and protect his people. The Allfather's example gently urges us to seek knowledge, to be willing to make sacrifices for it, and then to use what we learn for the betterment of all. 12. Self-sacrifice for higher knowledge. Odin's quest for wisdom did not end with his eye. In another astonishing act of sacrifice, Odin sought to master the secret of the runes, the magical letters that shape fate. He knew that the runes, which held cosmic power and wisdom, would reveal themselves only to someone who proved worthy by suffering and sacrifice. Thus, Odin approached the great world tree Yggdrasil, which connects all the realms, and made a grim vow. He stabbed himself with his spear and hung himself from a branch of the tree, piercing his own side, a willing victim. He forbade any of the other gods from helping or feeding him. For 9 long days and nights, Odin dangled between life and death on the tree, winds whipping him, his blood dripping into the dark roots below. He endured agony, starvation, thirst, and isolation. On the verge of death, at the end of the 9th night, the runes at last revealed themselves to his sight. The shapes and meanings of the magical letters became clear in his mind. In that moment, Odin seized the knowledge of the runes. utterly spent but triumphant, he let out a mighty cry and fell from the tree, reborn in spirit. He had sacrificed himself to himself, as one poem puts it, undergoing a symbolic death to achieve a higher understanding. The runes gave him not only writing, but magic songs and charms, powers to heal, to bind, to see the future. This myth carries a profound lesson. To grow wiser or spiritually stronger, one must be willing to sacrifice and endure trials. For the Norse, Odin's ordeal was the ultimate example of shamanic initiation, facing death to learn the secrets of life. We might think of it this way. Sometimes we have to let parts of our old self die, our ego, our comfort, our ignorance, so that a wiser self can be born. Growth can be painful. Learning can demand humility and suffering. Whether it's spending long nights studying or facing personal hardships that teach us compassion, we hang on our own world tree at times. Odin's story assures us that such sacrifices are worthwhile. After hardship and perseverance, illumination comes. Just as the world tree gave Odin wisdom in exchange for his pain, life often rewards our courage and resilience with insight and strength. This calming but powerful tale encourages us to be brave in our personal trials, knowing that by overcoming them, we claim our own runes, the wisdom and capabilities that were hidden within us all along. 13. The power of writing and symbols. Through Odin's sacrifice, the Norse gained the gift of the runes, which were more than just an alphabet. They were potent symbols filled with magic. In Norse thought, writing was a sacred act. The very word rune means mystery or secret. When Odin learned the runes, he didn't keep this knowledge solely for himself. He shared it with gods and eventually mankind. Runes had the power to preserve knowledge and invoke magic. A simple carved rune could represent a sound, but also an idea or even a spell. For example, a rune could be carved on a warrior's spear to give it victory, or on a woman's cup to grant safe childbirth, according to the sagas. The lesson we can glean here is an appreciation for the written word and symbols, how ideas, once recorded, carry power across time. Thanks to runes, the deeds of heroes and the wisdom of poets could live on after death. In a quiet way, this underscores the importance of literacy and learning. The Vikings carved runestones to mark graves or great events. Those stones still speak to us today across a millennium, proving that knowledge written is knowledge preserved. It was as close to immortality as one could get, which ties back to the notion of fame and memory never dying. On a personal level, this teaches us that writing down our thoughts, lessons, and stories can be a meaningful act. Whether in a diary, a letter, or a creative work, we imbue our words with a bit of magic, the magic of affecting others whom we may never meet. The Norse also saw in the runes that language and intention have power. A spoken blessing, a carved charm, or even the names we give to things all shape reality in subtle ways. By choosing our words carefully, whether spoken or written, we can influence the world for good. This was literally true in their mythic thinking. Knowing the right rune or name could tame a fire, heal a wound, or calm the seas. In our everyday life, we might say the same in a figurative sense. Words can hurt or heal, inspire or discourage. So, this gentle lesson from the runes is to respect the power of language. Use it wisely, truthfully, and kindly. A simple, kind word can have magical effect on someone's day. The runes remind us there is magic in communication and learning, a magic Odin hung on a tree to secure for all of us. 14. Inspiration, a gift worth seeking. One of Odin's most extraordinary quests was for the mead of poetry, a special elixir that granted the drinker the gift of wisdom, eloquence, and creative inspiration. This mead was brewed from the blood of Kvasir. Remember the wise being formed from the peace spittle of the gods, after he was sadly slain by dwarves. The dwarves who concocted this mead eventually lost it to a giant, and that giant hid it in a deep cave, guarded by his daughter. Odin, always craving knowledge and now wishing to grant the gift of poetry to gods and humans, went to great lengths to obtain this precious mead. His journey was itself full of trickery and trial. In one part, he tricks some servants and wins over a giant's trust. In another, he bores through a mountain in serpent form to reach the chamber of the mead. There, he meets the giant's daughter Gunnlod, who is the guardian of the mead. Odin charms her, spending 3 nights in her embrace, and she grants him 3 sips of the mead. Odin's sips turn into gulps with each one. He drains a whole vat of the magical mead. Transforming into an eagle, Odin escapes the cave and flies back to Asgard, carrying the mead in his belly. The furious giant chases in eagle form as well. It's a close call, but Odin manages to reach the god's stronghold and spit out the mead into containers prepared by the other gods, with a little spill falling to earth for lesser poets. This myth illustrates how highly the Norse valued poetry, intellect, and the art of expression, so much so that Odin risked life and limb for it. The mead of poetry symbolizes the wellspring of creativity and wisdom. The lesson for us is that inspiration and knowledge are treasures worth striving for. Odin's trials show that gaining creative or intellectual powers can be challenging. One might need patience, cunning, and even passion, as Odin showed with Gunnlod, to achieve it. But once gained, this gift isn't meant to be hoarded. Odin shares the mead freely with the gods and indirectly with humanity, signifying that true wisdom or talent is best used to inspire others. Think of how we feel when we share a poem, a story, or even good advice. It multiplies its value. The Norse bards who drank of Odin's mead, figuratively speaking, would recite glorious sagas that rallied warriors or comforted communities in winter. We're reminded that creativity, our songs, stories, inventions, is a divine spark that illuminates the world. So if you have a passion or talent, pursue it, even through difficulties. And once you attain that golden mead of your own inspiration, pour it out for others to benefit and enjoy. In doing so, you partake in the same cycle that Odin began ages ago, keeping the flames of inspiration alive through the darkest of nights. 15. Strength as a responsibility. When we think of Norse mythology, one of the first figures that comes to mind is Thor, the thunder god with his hammer Mjolnir. Thor's defining quality is his incredible strength, but the myths make clear that this strength isn't for bullying or self-aggrandizement. It's a sacred trust to protect others. Thor is often depicted riding across the sky in a chariot drawn by goats, swinging his hammer to smash the frost giants who threaten the gods or humans. He is the defender. In the tales, whenever monstrous giants or demons menace Asgard or Midgard Earth, it's Thor who is called upon. As one commentary puts it, when disaster loomed, nothing else, no higher culture or refined virtue, is possible without first securing the perimeter. Thus, Thor was most revered because he provided that basic safety. The gods and people could sleep at night because Thor was out there battling the storm giants or wrestling sea serpents. What lesson does this impart? Great power comes with great responsibility, an ancient version of that Spider-Man wisdom. The Norse knew that raw strength could be dangerous if misused, but in Thor they saw strength married to righteousness and reliability. He was a bit simple at times, but his heart was good and his arm ready to shield the vulnerable. One story has Thor disguised as a young boy spending a night in a peasant's home. In the morning, he blesses them with prosperity. Another has him wading into the sea to fish up the world serpent that encircles the ocean, trying to stop it from causing floods. Always, Thor's might is directed at keeping chaos at bay, so that life can flourish. We, too, can learn that whatever strengths or advantages we possess, be it physical strength, intelligence, wealth, or influence, are best used to help and protect, not to dominate. Thor cherished humanity. He was called protector of mankind. And so should those of us who have any power consider ourselves guardians of those less powerful. It's a lullaby of responsibility. Knowing someone strong and kind watches over you is deeply comforting. And if you are the strong one, the myth urges you to be gentle and just a safe harbor for others. In this way, strength becomes an expression of love, just as thunder in Norse lands meant Thor was on patrol, loving his people by defending them from the ice and fire of a dangerous world. 16. Courage in the face of the impossible. Thor's adventures also teach us about bravery and perseverance, even when success is uncertain. In the tale of Thor's visit to Utgard, we see the thunder god's courage tested not by a straightforward fight, but by a series of bizarre challenges that disguise deeper truths. Thor and his companions, including Loki, travel to the castle of Utgard Loki, a king of the giants. There, they are met with mockery and a dare. Each must prove themselves in a contest. Thor, proud and mighty, agrees to 3 contests. First, he is handed a drinking horn and told to drain it. Thor takes a huge gulp, but the horn's level hardly drops. 2 more deep draughts, and still it isn't empty. Next, Thor is asked to simply lift the king's gray cat off the floor. Thor heaves with all his godly strength, but manages only to raise 1 paw of the cat in the air. Frustrated, Thor demands a chance to fight someone in wrestling. The king calls out an old crone, seemingly weak and toothless. Thor wrestles her with all his might, but he cannot push her down. Instead, Thor himself is forced to one knee by this elderly lady. Humiliated, Thor and his friends prepare to leave. But Utgard Loki then reveals the truth. It was all illusions. The horn was connected to the ocean. Thor's gulps had actually lowered the sea level a bit, creating the tides. The cat was in fact the great Midgard serpent that encircles the world, and Thor's lifting one of its coils was a feat that stunned even the giants. The old crone was old age personified. No one can beat age, but Thor wrestled so fiercely he at least stayed on his feet a long time. The giants, fearing his strength, used magic to cheat him, and now they were in awe that he accomplished as much as he did. Thor's failures were secretly incredible successes, because he did far better than anyone else could against unwinnable challenges. This story teaches us that even when we think we've failed, if we gave our best, we might have achieved more than we realize. It also reminds us that some challenges are unwinnable in absolute terms. No one can defeat time or empty the sea, but what matters is the effort and courage we show. Thor walked away thinking himself beaten, yet that experience didn't break him. It humbled him and also spurred him to keep trying. In fact, myths say Thor never forgot the humiliation by the giants and promised himself to work even harder to protect others. From this, we glean a comforting lesson. You won't always win, and that's okay. Courage isn't proven by always succeeding, but by standing up and trying even when odds are against you. The Norse, living in a harsh environment, knew sometimes you battle the cold, the storm, the long night, and you can't win against winter, but you can endure it with honor and grit. Thor's tale gives us a warm encouragement. Do your best, especially when success looks impossible. There is honor and growth in the attempt, and often you make more difference than you think. Even when you feel small or defeated, your brave efforts might be quietly lowering the oceans of difficulty for those who come after you. 17. Learning from failure. The myths never leave a noble failure as the end of the story. Thor's experience in Utgard, once understood, became a moral lesson that he took to heart. We're told that Thor, upon realizing the giants had tricked him, did not sink into despair or give up defending the world. Instead, he felt a manly sense of honor, a determination to improve and eventually have his reckoning against the forces of chaos, the giants. He channeled any shame he felt into renewed vigor in protecting gods and humans. In a broader sense, this illustrates a distinctly Norse attitude. Use setbacks as fuel to drive you forward even harder. We see similar themes in human heroes of Norse sagas. A warrior might lose a battle, only to train harder and return to win the war. Or a young person might make a grave mistake, only to learn from it and grow into a wise leader. It's a mindset of resilience. The Norse did not expect life to be easy or victories to come without loss. What mattered was responding to failures with tenacity. Don't sulk, don't quit. Instead, ask what the experience taught you and how you can do better next time. This approach is wonderfully encapsulated by the proverb, "Fall 7 times, stand up 8." While not a Norse saying specifically, it matches their spirit. For them, even the gods, beings as grand as Thor could stumble. If Thor can get up, dust himself off, and try again with a hearty laugh or a fierce vow, so can we. It's a quietly empowering thought as you drift into sleep. All the day's little failures and embarrassments can be reframed as lessons, perhaps even as hidden successes in disguise. In the gentle darkness, we can let go of our self-judgment and resolve that tomorrow will rise like Thor, stronger and wiser for what didn't go right today. The giants of life can't keep us down if we keep getting back up. And as the myths often show, fate sometimes saves a special triumph for those who persist. Thor would indeed meet that world serpent again at Ragnarok, and though it cost his life, he slew the beast, fulfilling his promise to himself. For us, thankfully, our challenges are usually less lethal, but the ethos remains. Embrace your failures, learn, and come back fiercer. In this way, what seems like a loss becomes an essential step toward a future victory. 18. True courage versus bravado. Another heroic figure, Tyr, offers a lesson in the nature of courage and honor. Tyr was the original war god of the Norse and famed as the bravest of the gods. The most telling story of Tyr is his role in the binding of the great wolf Fenrir. Fenrir was a gigantic, ever-growing wolf, one of Loki's monstrous children, and a creature of prophecy. It was foretold that Fenrir would one day break free and wreak havoc, even killing Odin in the final battle of Ragnarok. Understandably, the gods wanted to neutralize this threat early on. While Fenrir was still young, they brought him to their stronghold and raised him, hoping to control him. Only Tyr was bold enough to approach Fenrir and feed him each day. The wolf was so fearsome that the other gods kept their distance. As Fenrir grew to an enormous size, the gods decided to chain him. Twice they tried strong metal fetters, and twice Fenrir snapped them with ease, thinking it all a game of strength. Realizing no ordinary chain could hold him, the gods commissioned a magical ribbon called Gleipnir. It looked like a silken leash, but it was forged by dwarves from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footsteps, a fish's breath, and other unseen elements. Gleipnir was thin and soft, yet unbreakable. When the gods presented this to Fenrir as the next challenge of strength, the wily wolf smelled a trap. He demanded that one of the gods place their hand in his mouth as a token of good faith, a pledge that the binding was just a test and not a trick. The gods fell silent. They knew it was a trick, and whoever put their hand in that maw would likely lose it. Only Tyr stepped forward. Tyr calmly placed his right hand between Fenrir's jaws, knowing full well what would happen. Fenrir was bound by Gleipnir, and when he found he could not break free, he bit down in rage and bit off Tyr's hand. Tyr endured this loss without crying out. Thus Fenrir was secured, at least until Ragnarok, and the gods were saved from immediate danger, but at the cost of Tyr's hand. In that moment, Tyr proved he valued the safety of all over his own well-being. This is true courage and honor. Unlike bravado or mere bold talk, which many might have, Tyr's bravery was quiet and sacrificial. He did what was necessary at personal cost for the greater good. The Norse held this act in the highest esteem. In fact, they named Tuesday, Tyr's Day, after him, memorializing his honor. The takeaway for us is profound. Courage isn't the absence of fear or pain, but the willingness to do what's right despite fear or pain. Tyr could have easily stayed back and let someone else step up, or hoped for another solution. But he understood the stakes. His sacrifice meant Fenrir was chained and the world saved from immediate chaos. In life, we may not face giant wolves, but we often face situations that call for personal sacrifice. Maybe standing up for someone being mistreated even if it costs us popularity, or admitting a mistake at work at risk to our reputation, or sacrificing time and resources to care for family. Tyr's story gently reassures us that doing the honorable thing is worth it, even if it bites. You may carry a scar, literal or figurative, for doing what's right, but that scar is a badge of honor. Tyr became renowned among the gods for his brave deed, just as we remember selfless heroes in our world. So when you feel afraid to do something courageous, remember Tyr, and let his steady bravery inspire you to be fearless and selfless when it counts. 19. Honor and legacy through sacrifice. Tyr's one-handed stance among the gods became a symbol of honor, a constant reminder that he put the community's well-being above his own flesh. In Norse belief, such sacrifices were not in vain. They conferred lasting glory and legacy. Tyr's name lived on as the exemplar of bravery. The myth even draws a poignant comparison. Just as Odin lost an eye for wisdom, a personal gain, Tyr lost a hand for the safety of others, a communal gain. The Norse admired Odin's quest, but they revered Tyr's altruism even more. This tells us that, to them, sacrificing for others was the highest moral act, the essence of heroism. We see this echoed in their human stories too. Many sagas speak of warriors or leaders who give their lives for their people and are hence remembered in songs and runestones. A key part of Norse ethos is that fame and memory are the closest thing to immortality. Dying bravely or sacrificing one's comfort for honor ensured one's name never dies. Tyr, who likely would perish in Ragnarok, fighting the Hound Garm, where both would slay each other, according to prophecy, was at peace knowing he had done what was necessary. There's a warm courage in that acceptance. In a way, Tyr lived on in every act of courage that the Norse celebrated thereafter. For us listening quietly, the message might be, think of the long term. What do you want to be remembered for? Likely not for wealth or avoiding all risks, but for moments you helped others, stood up for right, or endured hardship for a noble cause. Those are the stories people tell with gratitude and pride. Tyr's story also has a ripple effect in the myth. It inspired the other gods and even mortals who would have heard these tales by the fireside to be brave when duty called. One person's sacrifice can inspire many. It's a comforting thought that our difficult choices might light a torch for those who come after us. Moreover, this myth assures us that even if a sacrifice costs you something tangible, a hand, an opportunity, etc., it can earn you something intangible but far greater: respect, love, an honorable legacy. Tyr becomes, in essence, a moral North Star precisely because of what he gave up. So as we float along in this story, we can reflect. What are we willing to give or give up for the greater good? When we act with integrity and bravery, we become part of a chain of honor stretching back to Tyr and beyond. And that is a kind of immortality, to have one's deeds live on in the hearts of others. In the soft darkness of this moment, we can resolve to face life's asks of us, big or small, with Tyr's kind of honor. In doing so, we weave our own strand into the grand tapestry of stories worth telling. 20. The value of trust and the cost of betrayal. The binding of Fenrir also poignantly illustrates trust and betrayal. Remember, Fenrir only allowed himself to be tied up with Gleipnir because the gods offered a gesture of trust, Tyr placing his hand in Fenrir's mouth. Fenrir trusted Tyr, the one god who had shown him kindness by feeding him, enough to agree. When the trap sprung and Fenrir realized he'd been tricked, he bit down and took Tyr's hand. Who can blame the wolf? He had been betrayed by those he thought were friends. This moment gave the Norse a powerful image of broken trust. A bitten hand and a chained wolf. In life, too, when trust is violated, both parties are hurt. Fenrir lost his freedom. Tyr lost his hand. The gods avoided one danger but incurred guilt and sorrow. They had to hear Fenrir's howls of rage and pain and know they had broken their bond. This was not done lightly in myth. It was a last resort because prophecy left them no choice, but still the atmosphere is tragic. The lesson we draw is that trust is sacred and costly. The Norse placed a high premium on oaths and loyalty. Betrayal was considered among the worst offenses. In a culture where survival often depended on tight-knit bonds, among warriors, family, seafaring crews, trust was literally life-saving. If someone betrayed that trust, it could mean disaster, as when a traitor in a saga opens a fortress gate to the enemy, or a false friend stabs a hero in the back. Conversely, keeping trust even at personal cost, like Tyr did, was the height of honor. So while Tyr's action involved a form of trickery, he personally upheld his end. He knew he would lose his hand and still went through with it, thus in a strange way honoring the bargain from his side. This dual nature of the story teaches that sometimes doing right is complicated, but the ideal remains: be true to your word and your comrades. The sting of Fenrir's bite is a reminder that when we break faith, something precious is irrevocably lost. Going forward in our own lives, this encourages us to strive to be trustworthy. If someone confides in us, we hold that confidence as Tyr held his hand calmly in the wolf's mouth, bravely and faithfully. And if we ever must break a promise, perhaps in an impossible situation, we should know it may leave scars, so we do so only with utmost caution and remorse. The overall tone is a gentle one. Build trust carefully and honor it fiercely. It's what knits families, friendships, and societies together. When trust is strong, even a giant wolf can be tamed. When it's broken, even a god is maimed. As you drift off, you can feel gratitude for those you trust in your life, and who trust you, vowing quietly to keep those bonds as shining and strong as the magical Gleipnir ribbon, which, unlike ordinary chains, held true. 21. The trickster's two sides, help and harm. No exploration of Norse lessons would be complete without touching on Loki, the wily shapeshifter, the sly silver-tongued troublemaker of Asgard. Loki is a fascinating figure because he embodies duality. At times, he's the savior of the gods with his clever schemes, and at times he's the author of their woes with his mischief. Through Loki, the Norse learned to be wary of unchecked cleverness and malice, yet also to appreciate how wit and humor can solve problems. On one hand, Loki's cunning benefited the gods immensely. We've heard how he orchestrated the making of Thor's hammer and other treasures to repay Sif's hair, turning a prank into profit. We've seen him help Thor retrieve his hammer by outwitting giants. Another tale recounts how Loki once saved the god Freyr's servant from a giant by transforming into a fiery eagle. In these instances, Loki's quick thinking and shapeshifting saved the day. The Norse valued cleverness. A small, smart warrior could outfox a big, dumb one, and Loki is that principle personified. Yet, on the other hand, Loki's pranks and scheming ultimately turned destructive. He grew increasingly erratic and spiteful. The most tragic example is Loki's hand in the death of Balder, the shining beloved god. Out of envy or sheer chaotic urge, Loki guided a blind god's hand to throw the mistletoe that killed Balder. After this unforgivable act, Loki sneered at the god's grief. Eventually, his crimes piled so high, including a vicious insult contest where he mocked all the gods, that the Aesir bound Loki in a cavern, as we heard earlier. The message in Loki's arc is that chaos and treachery have a way of compounding and backfiring. Early on, the gods tolerate Loki's antics because he's useful and usually sorry after. But each time, Loki crosses a new line, from harmless jests to harmful acts, until he destroys the trust and friendship he once had. For a long time, Loki was Odin's blood brother and Thor's travel companion, loved despite his flaws. But by breaking the ultimate taboos, helping kill a guest Balder in their hall, and refusing to weep for him, Loki broke the bonds of kinship and hospitality. The Norse lesson is clear. Betrayal and malicious deeds will isolate you and lead to your ruin. Loki's punishment, bound under dripping venom, and his fate at Ragnarok, fighting against the gods he once feasted with, show that unbridled mischief turns to evil and leads to sorrow for everyone. Yet, it's worth noting, the same cleverness that makes Loki dangerous is also what makes him useful. The Norse seem to understand that ambivalence, intelligence, and ambition can go either way. Thus, one must pair cleverness with conscience. In our lives, wit and creativity are wonderful, but without empathy and honor, they can become manipulative or destructive. The soothing takeaway as we consider Loki's tale is a call for balance. Enjoy humor, be inventive, but remember kindness and loyalty, and be cautious of those who show a Loki streak. They may charm you with a grin and a joke, but if they have no guiding moral compass, their friendship can turn snake-like. At the same time, even good people can learn from Loki's positive side. To think outside the box, to bring laughter in dark times, and to not be overly rigid. The trickster was a reminder that the world isn't black and white. It's nuanced, and one must navigate it with both heart and mind. As you breathe softly, you might imagine Loki's fire flickering, sometimes warm and playful, other times burning out of control, and understand the wisdom of channeling one's inner fire constructively, lest it burn bridges instead of lighting the way. 22. The danger of jealousy and resentment. Loki's downfall also highlights the corrosive power of jealousy. Baldur's tale is essentially an innocent being destroyed by someone else's spite. Loki could not tolerate that Balder was universally adored and untouchable, so he found a way to ruin it. This reflects a common thread in Norse and other lore. Envy is one of the most destructive emotions. It sneaks in and topples the pillars of joy. We see it not only with Loki, but in many sagas where a jealous rival betrays a hero or siblings fight over inheritance. The Norse, practical as they were, recognized that envy brings nothing but grief and chaos. Their myths counsel contentment and measured pride in one's own lot, rather than coveting another's glow. There's a specific lesson in how Baldur's invulnerability game with the gods, throwing things at him for sport since he couldn't be hurt, turned tragic due to Loki. It tells us that what starts as harmless fun can sour if someone harbors ill will. It's a soft warning to foster genuine happiness for others' blessings, and not let bitterness fester in the shadows. Had Loki shared in the delight of Baldur's safety, none of the tragedy would have occurred. In our lives, when we feel envy nibbling at us, we might remember Baldur and Loki and take a breath. Better to celebrate others' light than try to snuff it. One leads to camaraderie, the other to ruin. 23. The fragility of goodness. Baldur's story also teaches that even the best of us are not immune to harm, and thus goodness must be protected and cherished. Baldur was the shining one, kind, fair, beloved by all. Yet through a small flaw in the plan, the overlooked mistletoe, he fell. The image of everything in creation weeping for Baldur is deeply moving. It's as if the whole world mourned the loss of innocence and beauty. The Norse understood that in life, sometimes the brightest lights flicker out too soon, and that is a cause for communal grief. They responded by treasuring those who remained. After Baldur's death, the gods tried everything to reverse it, showing that when we lose someone or something precious, the longing to undo it is profound. Even though they failed, due to Loki's interference, their effort was a testament to how much Baldur meant. The tender lesson here is to value the good people and moments while we have them. Don't take them for granted, thinking they're invincible. Tell your friends and family you care, support the gentle souls, and guard the goodness in your community. In a sense, every kind act or beautiful thing is a little Baldur radiant but perhaps fragile in a rough world. By being attentive and loving, like Frigg who tried to shield her son with every oath, we do our part to keep goodness alive as long as fate allows. And if loss does occur, the myths also show that shared grief is powerful. When everyone wept for Baldur, it almost brought him back. In our sorrow, coming together can be healing. No single tear brought Baldur from hell, but the fact that all of creation cried except one being is what nearly saved him. It implies that if we as a community unanimously support a cause or express our love, amazing things can almost happen. Only apathy or a single holdout, like Loki as the giantess, can thwart collective goodness. Therefore, this myth quietly urges unity in the face of tragedy. Let no one stand aside when goodness is threatened or lost. Join hands and hearts. Who knows what miracle might come of universal empathy? 24. The inevitability of fate. With all their efforts, even the gods could not ultimately cheat destiny. This acknowledgement of fate's inevitability is a recurring theme in Norse myth. The Norns, three wise women, sit at the roots of Yggdrasil carving runes that determine the destiny of all beings. Not even Odin, with all his wisdom and foresight, can change what they decree. He knows the day will come when Fenrir breaks free, when Ragnarok arrives. He acts to postpone it, binding the wolf, gathering heroes in Valhalla. But he doesn't labor under the illusion that he can prevent it altogether. The myths suggest a balance between striving and accepting. The gods fight against their doom vigorously, yet also mentally steel themselves for it. For the Norse people, this mirrored their outlook on life. Winters, storms, illness, and death were facts of life, unchangeable. But one could decide how to meet them. The idea of WYRD, fate, in their culture wasn't something to bemoan endlessly. It was something to face with courage and grace. The lesson here is rather stoic. Some things are beyond our control, but our attitude and actions are within our control. The Norse found this empowering in a paradoxical way. If your death is fated and the time is set, then in the meantime you should live boldly, without fear, because worry won't change the outcome. It will only sap your joy. This mindset is encapsulated in many a Viking saying, like, "Fear not death, for the hour of your doom is set and none may escape it." It sounds grim, but in practice it encouraged them to seize life. We can take comfort in this perspective. It's not resignation, but acceptance that frees us from crippling fear of the unknown. Knowing that some challenges are fated, we will age, loved ones will pass, changes will happen. We can focus our energy not on resisting those inevitable tides, but on making the most of the moments around them. We see the gods doing exactly that, knowing Ragnarok will one day come. They still throw banquets, pursue love, cherish victories, and craft beauty, like poems and runes, in the present. It's a gentle nudge for us to do likewise. Accept that time will flow and ends will come, and let that knowledge deepen the sweetness of now. A blooming flower is fated to wither, but that makes its fragrance even more precious today. The Norns inscriptions bind all, but within that tapestry, we have the freedom to weave our courage, love, and honor. The Norse believe that while you cannot extend your life beyond its fated span, you can ensure that your name and story shine brightly within the threads of fate by how you live. Thus, fate isn't an enemy, but the stage upon which you dance your one dance. And knowing the dance will end one day, you can choose to dance all the more passionately and authentically. The stage upon which you dance your one dance. And knowing the dance will end one day, you can choose to dance all the more passionately and authentically. Facing the darkness with courage. Perhaps one of the most inspiring images in Norse myth is that of the gods at Ragnarok, fully aware that they march to their deaths, yet doing so without flinching. This is the final lesson we will reach as the climax of our journey, the notion of bravery in the face of certain defeat and the hope that springs from it. When Ragnarok, the doom of the gods, arrives, virtually all of the major gods know they will perish. Odin knows he is fated to be devoured by Fenrir. Thor knows he will kill the Midgard serpent, but its poison will fell him after. Freyr, who gave away his sword for love, knows he will fall to the fire giant Surt without a weapon. Despite this foreknowledge, not one of them hesitates. The gods don their war gear, say their farewells, and ride out to meet the monstrous forces of chaos on the plain called Vigrid. They fight with ferocity and valor, giving their all to protect the world they helped create. And indeed, because of their courage, even though they themselves fall, they manage to slay the mightiest monsters. Thor kills the world serpent Vidar, Odin's son, avenges Odin by tearing Fenrir apart. Tyr and the Hound Garm slay each other. Heimdall and Loki deal mortal blows to one another. By the time the battle is done, the forces of chaos are as ruined as the gods are. The world is consumed in fire and water, but it will be reborn, and crucially, because of the gods' stand, some gods survive or return, and humanity is not completely lost. Lif and Liftrazor emerge. If Odin and others had shirked or succumbed to despair, perhaps Surt and Fenrir would have completely destroyed all hope of renewal. So the myth imparts a final stirring call: never give up, even if you think the battle is unwinnable. You might not fully win, we all eventually die, as did the gods, but you can secure a better future by your courage. Your actions, even in defeat, can set the stage for renewal. In everyday terms, this could mean standing up for what's right even if you suspect you'll lose the argument or fight. It could mean continuing to be kind in a cruel environment, even if it wears you down, because your example might inspire others after you. The Norse heroes believed that dying bravely was its own victory, because it meant you never compromised your values or honor. They had a concept of dying well, sword in hand, metaphorically or literally. For us, fighting can be living your truth or helping others against all odds. There's deep peace in this resolve. It frees one from the outcome and focuses on the action. In the darkest times, we too can find a Ragnarok kind of courage to keep doing what's right, to keep hope alive, even if we personally won't see the final victory. The reward might be in the legacy we leave, just as after Ragnarok, the world was reborn and Baldur came back, heralding an era of peace and light. The gods who fell didn't live to see it, but it was their sacrifice that allowed it to happen. So whenever you feel despair creeping in, when the problems in front of you seem as vast as fire giants, remember the Norse gods charging out one last time, a blaze of glory against the night. In that imagery, find the resolve to face your own challenges with a fearless heart. And with that, dear listener, we have gently ascended through these 100 levels of Norse wisdom, from simple tales of hospitality by the hearth to the epic bravery at the end of the world. You might notice how the lessons formed a tapestry, threads of courage, honor, sacrifice, humor, and love weaving in and out, just like the Norns runes on Yggdrasil. The Vikings, through these myths, were teaching themselves, and now us, how to live in a world that can be harsh and unpredictable, yet also beautiful and meaningful. Life is a saga, they tell us. It will have its monsters and its marvelous treasures, its losses and its renewals. We may not meet Odin or Thor on the road, but we meet chances for wisdom and strength every day. We likely won't bind a giant wolf, but we can tame our fears or bad habits with bravery and care. We won't literally drink magic mead, but every time we share knowledge or art, we sip a metaphorical drop of Odin's poetic brew. Take a moment to feel how these old tales resonate in your own life. Perhaps a time you helped a friend in need, a bit of Thor's protector spirit in you, or a time you learned from a mistake, echoes of Loki's mixed legacy and Thor's humbling, or a time you stood your ground for something right, tears resolve glinting through you. These myths survive precisely because they ring true in our hearts. As we prepare to drift into sleep, let's recap very softly some of what we've gleaned. Be kind and generous, for it makes the cold world warm. Share your fire and bread like a good host. Cherish wisdom, seek it out, even sacrifice for it, as it lights your path. Remember Odin's eye in the well. Use your gifts to help others. Strength to protect, wit to solve problems, art to inspire, Thor's hammer defending. Loki's cunning in service of good when he chose. Odin's mead of poetry uplifting minds. Value your friends and keep your word. Trust is a treasure hard to regain once broken. Think of Tyr and Fenrir and choose honesty. Stay humble and laugh. Don't let pride isolate you. Thor wore a bridal dress and we all chuckle gently. Even the mighty can be silly when needed. Accept what you can't change and change what you can. Fate may set the stage, but you script your character. The gods couldn't stop Ragnarok, but they chose to face it heroically. When you fall, rise again. Every struggle can teach and temper you. Thor leaving Utgard Loki wiser, or any of us carrying on after a setback. Love deeply and openly. It gives meaning to all the battles. Frigg's love for Balder, Freya's tears of gold for Od, even Seijen's love for Loki in his agony. Love shines brightest in hardship. Know that endings lead to new beginnings. The sun will rise again, even if it's a new sun. After every personal loss or dark season, some form of rebirth occurs as surely as spring follows winter. Now, as you breathe softly and evenly, imagine you are sitting under the vast night sky of the north. Above you arch the branches of Yggdrasil, and perhaps the shimmering aurora borealis, the northern lights, which Viking lore said could be the gleam of Valkyrie's armor or the Bifrost Bridge glowing. The air is crisp and pure. Around you, the world is quiet and safe because all the lessons and valor of those stories form a protective circle. You've journeyed far in spirit, from the dawn of the gods to the twilight and renewal of the world. Feel, in your heart, a kinship with those ancient people who first listened to these tales around crackling fires. Like you, they knew fear and hope, laughter and tears. They looked up at the same sky and told stories to make sense of it all, to lull their children to sleep with courage and wonder. In this peaceful connection, you can let go of any worries. The sagas have absorbed them, giving you perspective. The North Star twinkles above, steady and guiding like a reassuring wink from Odin's one wise eye. The gentle earth supports you as the world tree supports the realms. You are part of this grand story, and your dreams are a continuation of it. Perhaps tonight you'll visit Asgard in slumber and feast with the gods, or sail with Vikings, or simply wander a beautiful Nordic forest with a sense of ancient magic in the air. Feel the weight of your body ease, as if a friendly god has granted you the gift of relaxation. Maybe it's enjoyed blowing a breeze of calm from the sea, or Freya sprinkling soothing dew, or just the comfort of knowledge gained. Your eyelids are heavy, but behind them you see golden apples and runes lightly dancing, symbols of health and knowledge infusing your rest. Your breath is the ocean's tide, in and out, steady and eternal as the cycles we spoke of. Cattle die, kinsmen die, all men are mortal, Odin whispers from the poem, but one thing never dies, the fair fame of one who has done well. You have done well tonight. You've traveled bravely and kindly through worlds of myth. Now it's time to rest, secure that your saga is on its path and all is well. May the lessons of the Norse guard you and guide you. May you sleep as soundly as a warrior in Valhalla after a hearty feast, and wake with the gentle promise of a new dawn, your own personal renewal like the world after Ragnarok, ready to start afresh with hope and wisdom. Good night, dear listener, and sweet dreams under the starlit sky of the north. All sources for these legends and insights can be found in the ancient texts and scholarly interpretations. For example, the Poetic Edda and Prose Edda compiled by Snorri Sturluson preserve the tales of Odin's sacrifices, the binding of Fenrir, and Ragnarok. Analyses by modern scholars provide context and meaning to these myths. The Havamal verses of Odin offer direct wisdom on hospitality, friendship, and reputation. Through these sources, the echoes of the Viking-age still speak to us, teaching courage, honor, and the transient beauty of life.